My parents screamed I was worthless and threw me out. "Leave, you useless nobody," Dad shouted. I made $22 million. So I replied, "All right then," and settled into my Florida beach house 3 weeks later. Can you even imagine pouring your heart and soul into building a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, supporting your entire family financially for years, only to have your own father look you in the eye and call you a lowlife? It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But that was my life, and frankly, I finally hit my breaking point. My name is Abigail, and at 34, I'm watching the waves from my Florida beach house, finally at peace. But getting here, that was a brutal journey, filled with tears, frustration, and a battle for self-worth that almost broke me. See, I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a place where traditional values aren't just a phrase, they're practically gospel. For my parents, Robert and Helen, education was the only path to success. Dad was an accountant, wearing his CPA like a medal, always saying, "Education is the only thing no one can take from you." Mom, a high school English teacher, echoed his reverence for credentials. Their mantra was simple: go to school, get good grades, respectable college, stable career. Period. But even as a kid, I knew my path was different. While they dreamed of a doctor or lawyer, I was busy. Grade school, handmade friendship bracelets. By 12, the most profitable lemonade stand in the neighborhood, experimenting with flavors and pricing like a mini CEO. My mom would just smile. "It's cute now, Abigail, but these little projects won't pay the bills when you grow up." High school was more of the same. I was selling custom phone cases, making enough to buy my own car outright. Meanwhile, my parents were fixated on SAT prep and college applications. "Just get your degree," Dad would insist. "Then you can play entrepreneur if you still want to." To keep the peace, I enrolled at State University, a business major. The irony wasn't lost on me, studying business in a classroom while itching to build one in the real world. To help with tuition, I took a job at a retail store, selling women's accessories. And that's where lightning struck. I kept hearing the same complaint from customers: the online shopping disconnect. What women saw in photos versus what arrived in the mail. It hit me like a freight train. A platform where real women, with all kinds of body types, could see how clothes actually looked before buying. This idea consumed me. My grades slipped as I poured every spare moment into researching, planning, and building a basic prototype website. Halfway through junior year, I made the decision that would change everything. I sat my parents down. "I'm dropping out to pursue my business full-time." The silence that followed was deafening. "Absolutely not," my father finally said, his voice eerily calm, dangerously quiet. "No daughter of mine is throwing away her education for some internet fantasy." My mother just started to cry. "Abigail, please don't ruin your life. You're so close." But my mind was made up. The next day, I withdrew from classes, using my tuition refund as seed money for what would become Try Before, my e-commerce platform. The aftermath was brutal. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was to express disappointment or ask when I'd come to my senses. I moved out, into a tiny studio that doubled as my office. I mean, I had to fold up my futon every morning just to make room for my desk. Those early days, a blur of 18-hour workdays, ramen noodles, and pure, unadulterated grit. I taught myself to code through free online resources, convinced local boutiques to let me photograph their clothes on different-sized volunteers. Each night, I fell asleep to the glow of my laptop, exhausted but exhilarated. 3 months later, the site went live. 2 days after that, the first sale came in. Then another, then 10 more. By month 6, we were processing over 50 orders daily, and I'd hired my first part-time employee, a photographer named Rachel, who believed in the vision as much as I did. At the 1-year mark, I invited my parents to see my small office. I thought maybe a physical manifestation of my dream would help them understand. "It's nice," my mother offered hesitantly, her eyes scanning the modest space. My father just nodded stiffly. "How much are you making after expenses?" When I showed him the books, we were actually profitable, a rarity for startups our age. He just said, "Let's hope it lasts. It's not too late to go back and finish your degree." That night, I cried myself to sleep, not from sadness, but from a deep, aching frustration. I was building something real, something that helped women feel confident, and it still wasn't enough. But I dried my tears by morning. If I couldn't earn their approval, I'd at least prove to myself I'd made the right choice. I had no idea then that financial success would only widen the rift between us, or that the daughter they considered a disappointment would one day be their financial savior. The transition from startup to actual company happened so gradually I often didn't notice the milestones until they'd passed. One day I was working alone, the next, I had 5 employees crammed into our tiny office, the AC struggling to keep up. The try before concept resonated deeply with women tired of online shopping disappointment. Our platform let users upload measurements and see clothes modeled by women with similar body types, using actual customers instead of professional models. 18 months after launch, we hit a wall. Our server kept crashing from increased traffic. We needed capital. After 67 rejections from investors, many of whom subtly suggested I find a technical co-founder, code for a man who knows computers, I finally found a believer in Janet Kingsley. She was a female angel investor who had built and sold 2 tech companies herself. "You've created something I wish existed when I was younger," she told me after our pitch, "and you've done it without burning through mountains of cash. That's rare." Her $500,000 investment valued Try Before at just over $3 million. That number felt surreal. I celebrated by upgrading from ramen to actual groceries and finally paying myself a modest salary. With Janet's guidance, we rebuilt the platform, adding virtual try-on technology, size comparisons, and a community section. Our team expanded to 20 people, moving into a proper office with conference rooms and a kitchen. The press started noticing, local business journals, fashion blogs, then a profile in Fast Company highlighting female founders disrupting e-commerce. Each media hit brought a surge of new users. By year 3, we'd crossed the $1 million revenue threshold. I bought myself a modest condo, nothing fancy, but mine, and sent my parents a check to help with home repairs. They cashed it without a word. At family gatherings, my father still introduced me as my daughter who didn't finish college. Never, my daughter who runs a successful tech company. My mother would subtly steer conversations towards my cousin Madison's law school graduation or Tyler's medical residency. "We're so proud of you all," she'd say, her eyes carefully avoiding mine. Once, at my grandmother's birthday dinner, an aunt asked about my business. "Oh, Abigail just got lucky with that internet thing." My father interjected before I could speak. "Good timing, right place. Like those people who bought Bitcoin early." I sat there, stunned into silence. Years of working until my eyes burned, learning every aspect of e-commerce, building relationships, reduced to lucky. That night, I added a sticky note to my bathroom mirror. "Your worth isn't determined by their recognition." By year 5, Try Before had over 100 employees. We'd expanded internationally, hitting $8 million in annual revenue with profit margins that would make most tech startups envious. Industry recognition poured in. Forbes 30 Under 30, a Webby Award. CNBC featured me. I sent my parents links to every article, every award, every TV appearance. Sometimes they'd respond with a brief, nice, or congratulations. Most times, silence. At my high school reunion, former classmates approached me with awe. My economics teacher asked me to speak to his students. In the eyes of my hometown, I was a success story. Everyone seemed to recognize what I'd built. Everyone, that is, except the 2 people whose approval I'd sought most. By the 6-year mark, Try Before's valuation climbed to $15 million. We moved into a premium downtown Cedar Rapids office. My team included brilliant minds from across the country. I bought a house, not extravagant, but beautiful, in a lakeside community 20 minutes from my parents. I thought maybe physical proximity would bridge the emotional distance. It didn't. "Must be nice to afford all this without student loans," my father remarked during his one and only visit, gesturing around my living room. The comment stung, but I was accustomed to the tiny barbs. What I couldn't have anticipated was how soon I'd move from disappointment to financial lifeline in their eyes, or how little that transition would change how they saw me. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in a strategy meeting when my assistant mouthed, "Your mother," and handed me the phone. Mom never called during work hours. "Dad's been let go," she said without preamble, her voice tight with anxiety. Budget cuts. After 30 years, at 58, my father was suddenly unemployed. His firm had been acquired, his position deemed redundant. What can I do? I asked immediately. The silence on the other end spoke volumes, pride warring with necessity. We'll be fine, she finally said. I just thought you should know. But they weren't fine. Within 2 months, their savings dwindled. My father struggled to find new employment, too experienced and expensive for entry level, too specialized for lateral moves. Meanwhile, my mother began experiencing severe migraines, eventually diagnosed with a condition requiring specialized treatment their insurance only partially covered. I didn't wait for them to ask. I simply took action. I paid off their remaining mortgage, $167,000, freeing up $1,500 in monthly expenses. I covered my mother's medical bills, arranged for specialists. When their 12-year-old car broke down, I had a new SUV delivered to their driveway. We can't accept this, my father said stiffly when I visited. You can and you will, I replied. Consider it payback for raising me. He took the keys. What began as emergency assistance evolved into regular financial support. I set up monthly transfers, enough for utilities, groceries, insurance. When their kitchen needed renovation, I paid for it. When the roof leaked, I replaced it. During the same period, my younger brother Mark was accepted to an expensive private college. Without discussion, I covered his tuition, room, and board. For my sister Emma's wedding, I wrote a check that gave her the celebration our parents could no longer afford. The money flowed one way, from my bank account to my family's needs. The acknowledgement of what this represented, however, never followed the same path. The business must be doing well, my mother would comment when depositing my checks, as if the funds appeared by magic. God provides, my father would say at family dinners I paid for, somehow missing that I was the instrument of provision. At one holiday gathering, I overheard him telling relatives, it's just temporary until I'm back on my feet. Abigail's doing fine right now with her internet shop. Internet shop? A $15 million company with international reach, reduced to a hobby. My sister Emma squeezed my hand under the table. They just don't understand what you've built, she whispered. But I do. It's amazing, Abby. That small acknowledgement meant more than she could ever know. As Try Before grew, so did my family's financial dependence on me. Dad eventually found part-time consulting work, but it paid a fraction of his former salary. Mom's health prevented her return to full-time teaching. I became the unofficial family bank, the source of emergency funds, home repairs, car payments, even vacation money. Yet, in family conversations, my business remained that website thing, or Abigail's project. My parents accepted my money while simultaneously dismissing its source. The cognitive dissonance was stunning. At one Sunday dinner, after my father spent 20 minutes lamenting how kids today don't understand the value of education, I finally broached the subject. Dad, do you realize my company now employs over 150 people? We're projecting $12 million in revenue this year. He looked up from his pot roast, which I had paid for, and smiled condescendingly. That's nice, honey. But these internet businesses come and go. What happens when it all disappears? At least your brother will have his engineering degree to fall back on. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. I've been running this internet business for 7 years now. It's not disappearing. Don't get defensive, my mother interjected. We're just concerned about your future. The irony was almost laughable. They were concerned about my future while living on my present success. I began to realize a painful truth. The financial support I provided wasn't bringing us closer. If anything, it created a strange dynamic where my achievements had to be minimized so their worldview could remain intact. Acknowledging that my path led to greater financial success than theirs would require rethinking core beliefs they weren't prepared to question. So, we maintained this strange dance. I continued supporting them financially while they continued treating me like a lucky child playing at business. Then came Thanksgiving. I had footed the bill for the heritage turkey, the premium wines, all the trimmings. I'd even paid for the recent dining room renovation that now showcased my mother's antique china. The house smelled of sage and butter as relatives filtered in. I arrived early to help with preparations, eager for a rare day away from the office. Try Before was in our busiest season, With Black Friday and holiday shopping approaching, but family came first. I was in the kitchen, transferring rolls to a basket, when I overheard my father's voice from the living room. He was speaking to my Uncle Philip, not realizing how sound carried through the heating vent. "Sure, Abigail's little company is doing fine now," he was saying, but she was just lucky with her timing. She wouldn't amount to much if her business failed. No education to fall back on, you know. My hands froze mid-task. The casual cruelty of his assessment, delivered so matter-of-factly, made my stomach clench. "Seems pretty successful to me," Uncle Philip replied. "Didn't she win some big award recently?" "Anyone can win awards these days," Dad responded dismissively. "But what has she really accomplished? No degree, no real credentials. Just got lucky with the website." I set down the basket before I could drop it, my hands trembling. 7 years of 18-hour days. 7 years of solving problems, making payroll, creating opportunities for others. 7 years of supporting the very man who was dismissing everything I'd built. From the adjacent dining room, I heard my mother's voice joining the conversation. "We do worry about Abigail's future stability. The internet is so unpredictable, not like Jessica." And my aunt chimed in, referencing my cousin who had recently completed medical school. "You must be so proud of her accomplishment." "Oh, we are," Mom agreed warmly. "A doctor in the family. Now that's something." Something. Unlike whatever it was I had created. I moved mechanically through dinner preparations, a strange numbness spreading through me. When we finally sat down, I found myself observing my family as if from a distance. These people who had known me my entire life, yet somehow couldn't see me at all. Midway through the meal, during a lull in conversation, I decided to share some news I'd been saving. "I have an announcement," I said, setting down my fork. Try Before won the National Retail Innovation Award last week, and I've received an acquisition offer for $22 million. A moment of stunned silence followed. $22 million. My brother Mark finally asked, eyes wide. I nodded. I haven't decided whether to accept yet, but yes, that's the offer. The table erupted in excited questions and exclamations from everyone except my parents. My father continued eating as if I'd mentioned nothing more significant than a change in weather. My mother offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What would you even do with that kind of money?" Dad finally asked, his tone suggesting I couldn't possibly have a sensible answer. "Well, for starters, I've been considering expanding into a new market segment," I began. "And perhaps anyone could get lucky like that," he interrupted, setting down his knife with precision. "What will you do when it all disappears? You're still uneducated." The table fell silent. Even the clink of silverware stopped. "Robert," my Aunt Linda murmured, clearly uncomfortable, but he wasn't finished. "It's true. Jessica has built something real with her medical degree. That's a future. This internet money, it's just temporary." I stared at him, something breaking loose inside me after years of careful restraint. "Temporary, Dad? I've been running this company for 7 years. I employ over 150 people. I've changed how women shop online. We just worry about your stability," my mother interjected, playing her usual role as peacekeeper. "Your cousin Jessica is a doctor now. That's forever." The comparison was the final straw. "Jessica is brilliant, and I'm happy for her," I said carefully. "But why can't you be happy for me, too? Why isn't what I've built good enough?" "Because it's not real," my father snapped. "It's just internet nonsense that could vanish tomorrow. Not real." A strange calm settled over me as years of suppressed frustration crystallized into clarity. Is the mortgage I paid off for you not real? Are Mom's medical bills I covered not real? Is Mark's college tuition not real? Is this renovation not real? My father's face flushed dark red. "How dare you throw that in our faces? We never asked for your handouts." "They weren't handouts, Dad," I said, my voice rising slightly. "They were support from a daughter who loves her family despite never feeling good enough for them." "We never said you weren't good enough," my mother protested weakly. "You didn't have to say it. You showed it. Every time you dismissed my business as luck. Every time you called it temporary or questioned its legitimacy." My father pushed back from the table, standing so abruptly his chair nearly toppled. "I will not be spoken to this way in my own home. The home I paid off, I said quietly, his expression contorted with rage. Get out, he hissed. Get out, you lowlife. No daughter of mine speaks to me this way. The word lowlife echoed in the stunned silence. My mother gasped but said nothing in my defense. My siblings stared in shock. I stood slowly, placing my napkin beside my plate. I'm a lowlife who built a $22 million company and supported her family for years. Interesting definition. I looked around the table at the faces of my extended family, witnessing this implosion. Some looked embarrassed, others uncomfortable. No one spoke up. I'll go, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. But let's be clear about what's happening here. I'm not being kicked out because I'm disrespectful. I'm being kicked out because I finally stopped accepting your disrespect. I walked out of the dining room, through the foyer with its new hardwood floors I had paid for, and out the front door. In my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I finally allowed the tears to come. 7 years of seeking approval from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. 7 years of proving my worth to those who had decided long ago that my path had no value. As I drove away from my childhood home, I didn't yet know that this breaking point would become my breakthrough. That sometimes, the most painful rejections lead to the most necessary freedoms. I only knew that something had ended, and despite the crushing pain in my chest, I had finally stood up for my truth. I spent that night in a hotel room, alternating between tears and a strange, hollow numbness. By morning, my eyes were swollen, but my mind had achieved an unnatural clarity. I took a personal day, my first in months, and sat by the window watching snowfall. My phone had exploded with messages. From my sister Emma, Dad was way out of line. Are you okay? From my brother Mark, that was insane. Call me. Even from Aunt Linda, your father should never have spoken to you that way. Conspicuously absent were any messages from my parents. Around noon, I called my best friend Miranda, who had moved to Boston years earlier but remained my emotional anchor. He called you a lowlife, she repeated after I recounted the events. Abby, that's not just disrespectful, it's cruel. Maybe I shouldn't have brought up the money, I said, still somehow finding ways to blame myself. Stop it, Miranda said firmly. You stated facts. He's been taking your money while belittling your success for years. That's not love, Abby. That's exploitation. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Exploitation? Had I been allowing myself to be used? But they're my parents, I whispered. I'm supposed to help them. Help? Yes. Subject yourself to emotional abuse? No. Miranda's voice softened. Honey, would you let a friend or employee be treated the way your parents treat you? The question hung in the air. Of course I wouldn't. I'd build a company culture based on respect and recognition. I'd ended client relationships with companies that mistreated my team. Yet I'd accepted, even enabled, this dynamic with my own family. Over the next few days, I made several attempts at reconciliation. I called their home, left voicemails. I sent an email, saying I was open to talking. I even drove by the house once, losing courage before I could knock. A week passed, then 2. Their silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, the acquisition offer deadline was approaching. $22 million represented years of work, risk, and vision. It would provide financial security I'd never imagined. I scheduled a meeting with Dr. Cassandra Wright, a therapist I'd started seeing earlier that year for work stress. Now, our session focused on something much more personal. Your parents have shown you exactly who they are and what they value, Dr. Wright said. The question is, can you accept that reality rather than continuing to hope for the parents you deserve but don't have? What about the acquisition? I asked. Part of me feels like if I take it, I'm giving up on proving myself to them. She leaned forward. Abigail, you've been trying to prove yourself for 7 years. At what point do you accept that the goalpost will keep moving? That night I made 2 decisions. I would accept the acquisition offer. And I would use this opportunity to create distance, both physical and emotional, from the toxic family dynamic I'd been enabling. The next morning, I called Janet Kingsley, my initial investor and now board member. I'm accepting the offer, I told her. But I have one condition. I want to relocate the headquarters to Florida. Florida, she questioned. That's quite a change from Iowa. I need a fresh start. I said simply. Janet, who had become a mentor, was silent for a moment. This is about your family, isn't it? She asked perceptively. Yes, I admitted. I can't keep trying to win approval that's never going to come. It's affecting my mental health, and honestly, my leadership. You don't need my permission, she said kindly. But for what it's worth, I think it's the right call. Both the acquisition and the move. The wheels were set in motion. The acquisition would be structured as an initial payment with a 3-year earn-out period where I'd continue leading the division. The buyers were amenable to the Florida relocation. During this transition, my siblings reached out separately. Emma came to my office, eyes red. I should have said something at Thanksgiving, she said. I'm so sorry, Abby. I hugged her tightly. It's not your responsibility to fight my battles. But you've been fighting for all of us, she countered. The tuition, my wedding, Mom's medical bills. You've carried this family, and they treat you like you're nothing. Mark's approach was different. He called to say Dad had reached out about help with some expenses. I told him to ask you, he said. He said he'd rather not. What happened? Are you cutting them off? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't made that decision consciously, but I realized I'd stopped the automatic transfers after Thanksgiving. I'm taking a step back, I said carefully. They can't treat me like I'm worthless while simultaneously relying on my financial support. That's fair, Mark conceded. But Abby, they really do need help. The property taxes are due, and Mom needs some follow-up treatments. I closed my eyes, the familiar weight settling on my shoulders. The part of me that still craved their approval wanted to immediately solve the problem, to be the good daughter. But Dr. Wright's words echoed. At what point do you accept that the goalpost will keep moving? I'll think about it, I told Mark. That night, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I would no longer enable the toxic relationship with money. I drafted an email to my parents, since they weren't taking my calls, explaining that while I love them, I needed to establish healthy boundaries. I cannot continue to provide financial support to people who don't respect me or what I've built, I wrote. When you're ready to have a relationship based on mutual respect, I'll be here. Until then, I need to step back for my own well-being. I hit send before I could lose my nerve, then sat in the dark of my living room, crying for the relationship I'd hoped for but never had. 2 days later, the acquisition paperwork was finalized. The initial installment, $12 million after taxes, was deposited into my account. The remaining $10 million would come through the earn-out period. I was officially a millionaire many times over, and I had never felt more alone. That weekend, I flew to Florida to begin house hunting. As the plane lifted above the gray Iowa winter sky, I felt something unexpected beneath the sadness, a glimmer of hope. Perhaps in leaving, I could finally find what I'd been searching for all along. Not their approval, but my own peace. The beachfront property wasn't the largest or most expensive, but something about it called to me. 3 bedrooms, wraparound deck, floor-to-ceiling windows, facing the Gulf of Mexico. It was nothing like the practical Midwestern homes I'd grown up in. It was vibrant, open, and unapologetically beautiful. It's perfect, I told the realtor. I'll take it. The speed of the decision surprised even me. After years of seeking approval for every choice, the freedom to follow my instincts felt almost dizzyingly liberating. I closed on the house in January and immediately hired a local designer. No more beige walls and practical furniture chosen for durability. This home would reflect who I was becoming, not who I'd been told to be. Bold colors in the living areas, I instructed Lucia, the designer, and I want the main bedroom to feel like a sanctuary. She smiled, seeming to understand the subtext. Starting fresh, completely, I confirmed. While the house was being prepared, I focused on the business transition. The acquiring company kept our team intact, and for those who relocated to Florida, I arranged generous relocation packages and temporary housing. Our new offices in Tampa were modern and bright, with views of the bay and an energy that felt aligned with our next chapter. The parent company largely left us to operate independently, appreciating our unique culture. By March, I was settled in my new home, finding my rhythm in this unfamiliar but welcoming environment. The perpetual sunshine felt metaphorically appropriate, a literal brightness after years in the shadow of disapproval. I made conscious efforts to build a social circle. I joined a beachside yoga class, attended local business networking events, even tried paddleboarding lessons where I spent more time falling into the water than standing on the board. The instructor, a laid-back woman named Diane, became my first local friend. "You need to stop overthinking it," she advised during one frustrating session. "Your body knows what to do if your mind would just get out of the way." The comment struck me as applicable to more than just paddleboarding. As spring bloomed into summer, my new life took shape. I established a routine that prioritized balance, something I'd never allowed myself in Iowa. Mornings began with coffee on the deck, watching dolphins play. Workdays were productive but no longer all-consuming. Evenings often involved walks on the beach or dinners with new friends. I launched a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs without college degrees, remembering how isolating it had felt to forge that path alone. The Unconventional Founders Initiative paired seasoned business owners with promising talent who lacked traditional credentials but possessed drive and vision. Education comes in many forms, I told the cohort at our kickoff event. Some of the most valuable lessons can't be taught in classrooms. The program gave me a sense of purpose beyond the day-to-day business operations. It felt healing to create the support system I wished I'd had. Communication with my parents remained sporadic. Emma called regularly, genuinely interested in my new life. Mark checked in occasionally, usually with updates about his engineering career, or more awkwardly, veiled references to our parents' continuing financial struggles. I maintained my boundary about financial support, though the guilt never fully dissipated. 6 months after my move, the doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone, and was surprised to find my mother standing on my porch, looking small and out of place against the backdrop of palm trees and tropical flowers. "Mom," I said, genuinely shocked. "How did you? What are you doing here?" "Your assistant gave me the address when I called your office," she explained. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, my mind racing. She looked around the open concept living area with its turquoise accents and artistic touches, so different from her traditional decor. "It's very bright," she offered, which from Helen Patterson constituted high praise for anything unconventional. I made coffee, and we sat on the deck overlooking the water, an awkward silence stretching between us. Finally, she spoke. "Your father doesn't know I'm here." I figured as much. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I recognized from childhood. "We're struggling, Abigail. The property taxes have doubled, and my treatments aren't fully covered by insurance." There. It was the real purpose of her visit. Not reconciliation, but financial necessity. "I see," I said quietly. "We're not asking for much," she continued. "Just what you used to send. Before Thanksgiving." I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the familiar pull of obligation. "Mom, I can't go back to how things were. Dad called me a lowlife and kicked me out of your lives. Neither of you has apologized or even acknowledged how hurtful that was. He was upset. You know how he gets." "That's not an excuse for emotional abuse," I said, the therapy-derived term feeling foreign but accurate on my tongue. She flinched. "That's a very harsh way to describe family disagreements." "Is it? Would you accept a husband speaking to you the way Dad spoke to me? Would you advise a friend to maintain a relationship with someone who treated them that way?" She stared out at the ocean, avoiding my gaze. "It's different with family." "It shouldn't be," I countered. "If anything, family should treat us better than strangers do, not worse. We're your parents, Abigail. We need your help." The familiar guilt twisted in my stomach. I thought of all the resources I now had, the millions in my account, the comfortable lifestyle, the freedom. Wouldn't a good daughter share that abundance? Then I remembered Dr. Wright's guidance. Support without respect isn't love, it's exploitation. "I can't help you financially while nothing changes in our relationship," I said firmly. "I'm happy to help you both find financial planning resources, or to connect Dad with job opportunities through my network, but I won't send money to people who don't respect me or what I built." Her expression hardened. "So that's your ultimatum? Either we pretend to approve of your choices, or you'll let us struggle." The characterization stung, but I held firm. "That's not what I said. I'm not asking for approval. I'm asking for basic respect. There's a difference." "Your father was right," she said, standing abruptly. "Success has changed you." "No, Mom. What's changed is that I finally recognize my own worth, with or without your validation. She gathered her purse, her movements stiff with disapproval. Well, I guess we know where we stand. Either help us financially, or you're not part of this family. The words hit like a physical blow, but somehow I remained standing. I'm already not part of the family in your eyes. I have been since the moment I chose my own path. She left without another word. I watched her rental car disappear down the palm-lined street, then sank onto the deck steps, letting the tears come. The finality of the moment wasn't lost on me. She had traveled over 1,000 miles not to heal our relationship, but to re-establish the financial arrangement that benefited them. That evening, I walked along the shoreline as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The waves lapped gently at my feet, their rhythm somehow soothing the jagged edges of my pain. For the first time, I fully accepted that I might never have the parental relationship I'd longed for, and that continuing to chase it was preventing me from building the life I deserved. Sometimes the most difficult endings make the most necessary beginnings possible. As darkness fell over the gulf, I made peace with my choice. The family I was born into might never see my worth, but that didn't mean I couldn't create a chosen family who would. 1 year after moving to Florida, I stood on my deck, watching a spectacular sunset, a glass of wine in hand, and a sense of calm I'd once thought impossible. The anniversary hadn't been planned as a moment of reflection, but as the fiery orange sun melted into the Gulf waters, I couldn't help but measure the distance I'd traveled. Not just geographically, but emotionally. The acute pain of family rejection had gradually transformed into something else, a quiet wisdom that I carried like a smooth stone in my pocket, occasionally turning over to examine, but no longer sharp enough to draw blood. The business continued to thrive under the new ownership structure. Our user base had expanded by 30%, and the technology we pioneered was being implemented across the parent company's other platforms. I'd met all the earn-out targets, securing another portion of the acquisition payment. But the most significant changes weren't professional or financial. They were internal. I'd spent so many years seeking external validation that learning to trust my own judgment felt like discovering a new sense. Decisions that once would have triggered anxious second-guessing now came more guided by intuition and experience rather than fear of disapproval. I'd begun working on a new venture, a platform connecting self-taught professionals with companies looking beyond traditional credentials. The project stemmed from my own experience and the Unconventional Founders Mentorship Program, which had grown to support over 50 entrepreneurs. This time, the work felt different. I wasn't building to prove my worth or to earn recognition. I was creating from a place of purpose and joy because the work mattered, not because I needed it to validate my existence. My social circle had expanded to include a diverse group of friends who knew me as I was now, not as the perpetual disappointment I'd been cast as in my family narrative. We gathered for beach bonfires, community volunteer days, and lazy Sunday brunches where conversations flowed naturally, unburdened by decades of unspoken resentments. Therapy continued to be a cornerstone of my healing journey. Dr. Wright had connected me with a colleague in Tampa, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family estrangement and adult children of emotionally immature parents. The hardest part for many people, Dr. Martinez observed, is accepting that they didn't do anything wrong. That sometimes, no matter how perfect you try to be, some parents are simply incapable of giving the love and recognition their children deserve. That permission to stop blaming myself for a dynamic I hadn't created was perhaps the most liberating aspect of my healing. In April, my phone rang with an unexpected caller ID, Emma. "Hey, stranger," I answered, smiling. Though we spoke regularly, she rarely called midweek. "I did something you might not like," she began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Should I be sitting down for this?" "Maybe. I'm at the Tampa airport." I nearly dropped the phone. "You're here? In Florida?" "Surprise," she offered weakly. "I can get a hotel if it's not a good time." "Don't you dare. Send me your terminal information. I'm leaving now to get you." An hour later, we were sitting on my deck, the early evening breeze ruffling Emma's hair as she took in the view. "It's even more beautiful than your photos," she said. "I can see why you love it here." "It's home now," I replied simply. "But what brings you all this way without warning? Is everything okay?" She set down her iced tea, her expression turning serious. I wanted to apologize in person for not standing up for you at Thanksgiving and all the times before that, for accepting your help with my wedding while letting them dismiss everything you've built. Her eyes filled with tears. For being a coward. I reached for her hand. Emma, you weren't a coward. You were surviving a difficult family dynamic, just like I was. But you were brave enough to walk away, to demand respect. She wiped at her eyes. I've been playing along, keeping the peace, and watching how they talk about you when you're not there. It's not right, Abby. What do they say? I asked, not sure I wanted to know, but needing to hear it anyway. Dad acts like you abandoned them in their time of need. Like you owe them support, but withheld it out of spite. She shook her head. He never mentions calling you a lowlife, or how he's belittled your success for years. And Mom goes along with his version of events. The information hurt, but less than it once would have. I'm not surprised. I tried to defend you at Easter dinner, Emma continued. I pointed out everything you'd done for the family before the fallout. Dad accused me of taking sides, and Mom cried. It was awful. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle. That's just it. I don't want to be in the middle anymore. She straightened, a determination in her expression I'd rarely seen. I want to be firmly on the side of truth, which is why I came. To apologize and to tell you I understand now. You made the right choice. Those words, you made the right choice, unlocked something I hadn't realized was still tightly bound within me. A remaining doubt that perhaps I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving, too willing to walk away from family. Hearing my sister's validation felt like permission to finally, fully release that last thread of guilt. During Emma's 4-day visit, we talked more openly than we ever had growing up. She shared her own struggles with our father's impossible standards and our mother's conflict avoidance. I showed her my new life, the business, the mentorship program, the community I'd built. On her last night, as we walked along the moonlit beach, Emma asked, "Do you think you'll ever reconcile with them?" I considered the question carefully. I'm open to a relationship if it can be healthy, I said. But I've stopped expecting them to change or to suddenly see me clearly. That acceptance has been the most healing part of this whole journey. You seem lighter, she observed. More yourself. I am, I agreed. Turns out, living for your own approval is much simpler than chasing someone else's. The months that followed brought unexpected developments. My TED Talk on success beyond credentials went viral, bringing attention to both the mentorship program and my new platform. I received hundreds of messages from people who'd faced similar family dynamics after choosing unconventional paths. Your story gave me courage to stop apologizing for my choices, one young entrepreneur wrote. I dropped out of college 3 years ago to start my business, and my parents still introduce me as taking a break from school. Hearing how you navigated similar judgment helped me set boundaries without guilt. These connections reminded me that personal stories, when shared authentically, create bridges between experiences. The pain I'd endured now served a purpose greater than my own growth. It offered others permission to trust their own paths. In July, I received an unexpected email from Mark. Dad had a minor heart attack. He's stable, but it was a scare. Thought you should know. I sat with the news, checking in with my emotions. The old pattern would have been immediate guilt and rushing to fix everything. Instead, I felt compassion without responsibility. After talking it through with Dr. Martinez, I sent flowers to the hospital with a simple note. Wishing you a speedy recovery, Abigail. I didn't offer money. I didn't fly home. I acknowledged the situation without reactivating the unhealthy dynamic. It was a small moment, but it represented enormous growth. As the 1-year anniversary of my move approached, I realized I wanted to mark the occasion meaningfully. I decided to host a gathering at my home, part housewarming, part celebration of new beginnings. I invited my local friends, business associates, men from the program, and Emma, who promised to fly down for the weekend. The evening of the party, my home filled with laughter and conversation. People from different parts of my new life connected with each other, creating a tapestry of relationships I'd never imagined possible a year earlier. After dinner, as everyone gathered on the deck for dessert, Emma clinked her glass for attention. I want to propose a toast, she announced, looking at me with a soft, knowing smile. To my sister Abigail. A year ago, she made one of the hardest decisions anyone can make, to choose herself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else. She left behind criticism and conditional love to build this beautiful life where she can shine as brightly as she was always meant to. To Abigail, and to the courage it takes to begin again. Glasses raised as tears filled my eyes. Looking around at these people who accepted me exactly as I was, who celebrated rather than diminished my achievements, I felt a profound sense of homecoming that had nothing to do with geography. Later, after the guests had gone and Emma had retired to the guest room, I sat alone on the beach, watching the rhythm of waves in the moonlight. The journey from that devastating Thanksgiving to this moment of contentment hadn't been linear or easy. There had been setbacks, moments of doubt, and plenty of tears. But sitting there, with sand between my toes and stars overhead, I knew with bone-deep certainty that I wouldn't trade this hard-won peace for any amount of conditional family. Approval. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes losing what we thought we needed makes room for what we truly deserve. And sometimes the family we create through choice proves more nurturing than the one we were born into. As I watched the gentle Gulf waters reflecting moonlight, I whispered a thank you to my younger self who had found the courage to walk away, not from family, but toward authenticity, toward a life measured not by others' narrow definitions of success, but by the freedom to define it for myself. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between pleasing others and honoring yourself? Have you found the courage to walk away from relationships that diminished rather than celebrated you? Share your experiences in the comments below. I really want to know what you think. Thanks for watching.